I am delighted to be able to introduce your speaker this morning. She is outgoing, enthusiastic, dedicated, and passionate. In 2010, she answered her calling and traveled to Kenya to bring Science of Mind and our teaching and the principle to Africa. A beautiful being who stands rooted in her belief. She's a shining light. Please help me to welcome Reverend Connie Phelps and her talk, Different Strokes.
Yeah, that's fine. We need to leave that here. Good morning.
Good morning.
So just take a moment with me before I get started as we get grounded and present in this moment. So together I'm going to do a spiritual mind treatment. Might be for anybody that's new here, that's a form of affirmative prayer. So I invite you, if you hear something that works for you, to embrace it and embody it as your own words. So join with me now. As we take a moment to remember that there is a divine, creative life, force, energy, aliveness that exists everywhere. It is innate in the entire universe. It is the life back half, who and what each and every one of us, every idea, every action, every thought, everything that I do, everything that I am, is this life. It is God's life, and it is good. And so I know today that that goodness, that life has brought us here together in this moment to reveal something magnificent, to hear something with new ears, to experience something in a new way, to know that that life is alive and is living itself. And because that is so, that we are here. We are here to embrace it, to embody it, to embolden it, to know it, to live it, to be it, and to rejoice in it every day. And I am so grateful for this truth. I'm so grateful for this center. I am so grateful for this place to call home. I am so grateful for this life. And I just say thank you for this time together and for this way of being. We just release it knowing that today is good and very good. And so it is. So, I'm going home. Yay! I just say that. I am so excited. Catherine came home the other night and she could barely contain me because I was like up on the roof somewhere. I was so excited. I had just booked my flights. I've got clearance to go home. And I gotta tell you, it's because the love and the support of the ministers here in this center and the practitioners and every person that has stood with me for the last 6 months, stood with me and known the truth, and the truth has revealed itself. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you. Yeah. It is good and very good. So, I have always been in awe of those people, because I don't usually, often feel that way myself. So, it's something other than me often, that always have this way of seeing the very best in every situation. You know what I mean? It's that person in your life that when you're whining and complaining and cursing, maybe. I know ministers don't do that, right? And, it's that person that might say something to you like, well, gee, there must be something good. It's so irritating, isn't it? You just want to will you guys stop? So, the person I'm talking about. Well, it's that person that stops the flow of your story. can't be the only one. Sometimes, I just get so in my story, and we get on this roll of telling the story, and we really get good at it. Anybody here ever embellish a story? And the more we tell it, it gets to be a really good story, right? And then we start telling the story, and it's a habit. We maybe don't even believe it anymore. But have you ever found yourself getting to that place in your story? Like sometimes I can't even stand myself. Like seriously, who would want to even spend time with me when all I do is whine and I can't stand myself. This happened to me one day last week. I had a chemo treatment and I was whining and complaining. I finally put myself to bed because I couldn't stand myself. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, It's like, so I've spent some considerable time examining and researching this phenomenon. So what would make that kind of a person, the kind of a person that can see the good in everything? So I really strive to be that sort of person. It wasn't something that came really naturally to me. It took, well, dare I say, it still takes a lot of practice to be that kind of a person that sees the good. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about what kind of things, what kind of practice that we need to practice. I love that when Marilyn was saying, we have to, you're learning something new. It doesn't just often happen instantly the first time you try something. I mean, maybe you're one of the lucky people that's a really quick learner, but I like to say I know about myself. It takes me a lot of practice in doing my spiritual work. Anybody here ever notice that? I had one of my students call me yesterday and said, oh, I've got this, I don't know what's happened, but my life just is all going in this chaos. And again, the root of it was she was forgetting to do her spiritual practice. Anybody here forget to do their spiritual practice? We know it works, but it takes practice. We have to work it in order for it to work. So here's some ideas that have helped me in changing my stories and creating an experience of life that is filled with more love, more joy, more peace, more power, more passion, more presence, more abundance. Because in order for us to get what it is we say we want, we have to be different. We have to change. Dare I say we have to embody those qualities in order to create it. And I only know one way to do that, and that's by doing it over and over. And when we forget and we fall off, instead of beating ourselves up for, well, you should know better. Anybody can have that litany that goes on in your head. Well, you should know better that, you've been doing this for enough years. Like, how could you? So, those stories that we tell ourselves are not helpful. Because they actually stop us from doing what it is we need to do, which is more spiritual practice. So we need to keep doing it. So most of us would probably agree that there seems to be a lot of tragedy and pain in the world currently. That seems to be the truth. And sometimes what happens in the midst of all of that chaos and tragedy that's going on, we often feel a little helpless and perhaps hopeless in the face of it. And often we think, like, what, if anything, can I possibly do to make a difference in the world? Anybody feel like that? Yeah. So there were researchers, I love researchers, but they spent decades asking tens of thousands of people and recorded their answers to this one question. So this, this idea that the world's going to hell is not a new idea. Right? I mean, it's centuries old. So we don't have a license. It's not right now in this moment. It is something that is continually part of the human experience. And so they went around there asking this question. So the question they asked, so when I consider the condition of our world, I think things are getting what? Better. Better. I love this crowd. Because that's not the answer that these researchers got. They normally get answers like dangerous, frightening, out of control. So clearly, not in this group because we're doing our spiritual practice, right? But clearly, there is a level of anxiety in the world based on the state of the condition in the world. And so, how can we face the world's crisis, let alone our own, with that anxiety? What do we do? How do we move forward? How do we do that? How do we face it with resiliency, with creativity, with power, with presence? How do we do that? Einstein suggested that there's one question to ask yourself, and how you answer this question will determine your experience of life. And I love this question. Its question is, do I live in a friendly universe?
Yes.
Most of the world does not believe that we live in a friendly universe. Because if you answer those questions, so we could have pockets of our own ideas of, yes, we live in a friendly universe, yes, the universe is friendly, yes, the world is getting better, and yet there's a collective consciousness around us that doesn't match ours. Have you noticed that?
Yes.
So, for us to keep firm in our own belief in the face of, anybody here ever been called Pollyanna in your attitude? Oh, well, that's a Pollyanna. Like, how could you think that way? So often we have that similar experience of life because most of culture in the world does not agree with the way that we think about life. So often we tend to think we're a little bit different, which is often true. My experience of living in a third world country is this is predominant. This idea is predominant that there's scarcity, there isn't enough. There isn't enough time, there isn't enough energy, there isn't enough love, there isn't enough resources, there isn't enough money, you name it, there's not enough. And so what happens when we have that belief of not enoughness, we get to be right. That there's never enough, because that's how it works, right? Whatever we believe, that gets to be our experience. So I am continually immersed in that consciousness of not enoughness, that life is tough. And so to move into keeping myself clear in the midst of that cultural belief system takes a lot of practice, continual practice every day to know that. But both science and spirituality, they have proven that everything's energy, right? It's proven. I love when science validates what we believe. There was actually a scientific study done. Now how they do these studies just baffles me, but I love it anyway. So they did a survey of the cosmos, and they added up everything that they could find and determined that only about 4% of the available energy is used to make the entire universe. 4%. That means that there's 96% left over we're not using. That sounds like a pretty abundant universe to me. There's enough energy left over that we are not currently using to make 25 more universes, just like ours. That's a lot of energy. How could we possibly think there isn't enough when we are immersed in this idea of universal enoughness? Isn't that brilliant? Contemplate that. Take that into your meditation, that idea of enoughness. So how do we get to that point of staying there? Of realizing that there really is enough. So one of the spiritual practices that I think is key is the practice of gratitude. It's actually a spiritual practice. You know, we think, well, we're just thankful. And often we think we're just thankful after we've received something or something has done something for us, and then we're grateful. And I got to tell you, I am eternally grateful for the people that have been supporting me for the last 6 months. Amazing. And I'm grateful for that. But gratitude goes even deeper than that. Gratitude isn't just about getting. Gratitude is about being. And gratitude is a choice. We can choose to feel gratitude even when we think there isn't enough. But if you think there isn't enough, how do you feel gratitude? If you have the mindset that there isn't enough of anything, you're eternally in this place of not even being able to see what you do have. Have you ever noticed that? So gratitude then becomes a choice. We get to choose. So let's choose to be different. Let's choose to be that Pollyanna. Let's choose to be the person that sees the best. Let's choose gratitude. Let's choose abundance. Let's choose love. Because when we don't, the alternative is not pretty. So it becomes then a choice of thinking every day, every moment, every time anything happens, it gets to be a choice to be grateful for it. Grateful that it doesn't, and I'm serious about this, it doesn't matter what is showing up in your life. To be grateful for that experience. So if you're not feeling very grateful, because I got to tell you, when I first got back home here in June, I wasn't feeling very grateful about the experience I was having of the diagnosis that I got. It's not instantaneous to get into this place of gratitude often. The key is you have to keep working the principles in order to get there, to stay there, to be in that place of absolute gratitude. It's a way gratitude then becomes, when you begin to practice, it's a way of sort of reaching back into the truth of your being and allowing it to show back up again. Because your new experience cannot show up without an open heart. And an open heart is filled with gratitude. So gratitude seems to be the basis of this idea, this phenomena of people that always look for the best. It's people that have a grateful heart. When we get to notice what's right instead of what's wrong. Well, growing up in the family I grew up in, we didn't get a lot of opportunities to look for what was right. Anybody else have that experience of life? Right? And so it was sort of a practice. It was a way of being that I learned really well, of always seeing what was wrong. Like the glass is half empty instead of half full all the time. That becomes a way that we think. So to switch that around, to begin to see the other way, is a different way of thinking. And the truth is, I've noticed, and I'm sure many of you have also noticed this, that when we begin to see every problem or challenge with this new way of thinking of looking for what is right, we begin to realize that those experiences were the experiences where we learned the most.
Yeah.
Right? Where we learned the most. So instead of, but we're not going to learn anything from it if we're only looking for what is wrong. The only way we're going to get the learning that we need is by looking for what is right, for asking some questions. So, so the question that I asked was, and you might have heard me talk about this before, the question that I asked is why? What's the good here? Why? And not why me, from a place of whining, but of why. What is the good? What is the good? So the answer that I got was the good was to help shift the cultural perception around the diagnosis that I got, which was stage 4 ovarian cancer. That's like, when you say those words, you should see the fear that people, that's not a good diagnosis to get. But if truth is truth, truth is truth everywhere. And it's not just true for somebody and not true for, truth is truth for everybody. So the truth is that it doesn't matter what the condition is. Doesn't matter. God doesn't care if it's stage 4 ovarian cancer or if it's a hangnail. God doesn't care. There's no difference. So if that's the truth, because you know you get a hangnail, yeah, it's painful for a little while. I had one this week. It's painful, but it goes away. You know it's going to go away. So it doesn't matter what your condition is. You see, we get bogged down into the cultural belief that perhaps, you know, our diagnosis is a death sentence. Well, the truth is we're all going to die someday. I mean, really, it's the truth. Or that, you know, the doctor's beliefs in the severity of the diagnosis, you know, that it's this big thing. Or the deep-rooted family beliefs and the genetic predisposition. I mean, it's this huge, right? We make our stories big. We make our stories big. And we get the support to make it like, oh, this is a big story. But to God, it's not. It's just a story. And it's time to make a new story. So my new story was that it was just going to be gone. It was going to be gone. And I remember asking you all when I talked here, like way back when, in the summer, and I asked you all to stand with me in faith, knowing it was going to be gone. Well, last month I had the surgery. Surgeon opened me up, and there was nothing to remove. Yeah! It was gone. Shocked the surgeon. Shocked the oncologist. I don't think they still quite believe it. But I know it to be true. I absolutely know it to be true, because we do what we do. We pray, we know, we treat. We know the truth, and that truth is what sets the energy in motion. Grateful for it, right? Grateful I had this experience. For some reason, I just got to be home for 6 months. I got to spend time with my family, with my friends, with my spiritual community here, getting filled back up again. I got to experience so much love. Apparently I needed that experience.
And we needed you.
and it was good. And I'm so grateful that for this opportunity to experience that. And deep gratitude, real gratitude. So when we feel that level of gratitude for whatever has shown up, for whatever reason it has shown up, when we feel that, when we begin to feel that in our bodies, it takes the idea of gratitude as a spiritual practice, or any spiritual practice, as a spiritual practice. And it starts often as an intellectual exercise, right? You know, we go through the steps and we do it, and we keep a gratitude journal, and we write, you know, 3 things every day we're grateful for it. I'm not, those are powerful practices, absolutely. But eventually, it gets deeper. And eventually, we really begin to believe it. And the change in our bodies, that depth of feeling in our bodies, that aliveness is a powerful energy. And it attracts more to be grateful for. That's how it works. That's how it works. And so this is where we really begin to understand that this spiritual practice, whether it's a practice of gratitude or whatever practice that we're currently working on, in an intellectual way, we begin to realize it's more than an intellectual exercise. That's when we truly begin to believe it. But it takes consistent efforting, almost, to make ourselves do what we know we need to do, until it becomes a habit. Until it becomes just, you then become one of those people, one of those people that are seeing the best. Right? Even this is good. Whatever this is for you. To get to that place of saying, thank you. This is good. Ask, what is good about this? Whatever is causing you anxiety, whatever it is that is causing you pain, ask, what is good? Make it up if you have to. We're making up the other story anyway. We might as well make up a good one. I stole Tim's talk title today. He asked me to speak. I said, well, what's your title? He said, Different Strokes. I said, great, I can make that work. You know, different strokes. Be that other person that asks those deep questions, that knows the truth, that reveals the truth. You know, often our challenge to that is we get this idea mixed up in order to be grateful for something that we need to be happy about it. Or we're given a gift and it's got to feel good. Oh, I want to give that one back. This don't want that gift, right? We do that. But what if we didn't? You see, there's a really big difference between being happy and being satisfied. We get it mixed up. We think in order to be, many of us are satisfied but not happy because we are tied to our expectation, you know. We think, oh, well, that was a really crummy thing to have happen. I can't be happy until, you know, I get the new job, or I get $1 million, or I win the lottery, or I meet the love of my life, or whatever. You know, we've got all these stories. I'll be happy when. So we're unsatisfied and unhappy. How do we get to the place, really, how do we get to the place of being happy but unsatisfied? Because that's where we need to be. We don't need to be satisfied with what's going on in order to be happy. Happy is a choice. Happy is gratitude. Happy is saying, thank you. I may not like this. This may not feel good, but I'm really happy it happened. I'm really happy it happened. And to stay in that place, but to be unsatisfied, opens it up for something bigger to happen. See, often we're satisfied but unhappy. I want you to get unsatisfied. Because satisfied just keeps you stuck. We don't want to be satisfied. Holmes calls it the divine discontent. Let's be discontent. Because happiness just allows us to be in the status quo. So I want you to be happy, but unsatisfied. And gratitude can keep you there. Because that unsatisfaction is that edge of growth. Knowing that there's something greater. There's a new possibility. You see? Happy, but unsatisfied. So Wallace D. Wattles, I love his writings, he says, and because all things have contributed to our advancement, you should include all things in your gratitude. Because all things have contributed to your advancement. This too is good. Doesn't matter what that is. This too is good. Therefore, I'm grateful. And as the Buddha said, so let us rise up and be thankful. For if we didn't learn a lot today, at least we learned a little. And if we didn't learn a little, at least we didn't get sick. And if we got sick, at least we didn't die. So let's all be thankful.